Hello, I'm Steve Ryder and welcome back to Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. It's great to welcome Sam and Johnny back to the show, having had a week off. Sam, how are you?
All good, thank you. Yeah, good week to come back to. I got back in the middle of the week, so building up to the King George, saw everything that happened at Ascot, some great racing there, good racing at York as well, good support card there. So building into a brilliant week with good way. There we go. It's an amalgamation of the two.
Yeah, good way.
It's a good way to go, isn't it?
Good way to go.
Goodwood and Galway.
Absolutely, I like that. Yeah, one of the GGs, the two Gs this week. It's a great week to be alive. Great crack in Galway. A lot of people betting on the away meet, and we had a hell of a King George.
We certainly did. Yeah, that's going to be one of the races that we touch on before having a look ahead to the Qatar Goodwood Festival and Galway. Johnny, you're obviously on for the Irish Guineas a couple of months ago. Anything to note from Ireland recently in particular? Not from
God, that seemed a long time ago now, the Irish Guineas, yeah. And to know from Ireland, the Derby form's obviously been let down. I thought Leopardstown the other night, I thought some really interesting performances. Ger Lyons had a double, he's kind of clicking into form. Ylang, she's a filly by Frankel who won her second start again from the front. And there was a horse as well I just wanted to note of a Galileo horse. Must be Galileo's last crop of 2-year-olds. If I can get it up here. Finished second first time out for Aidan O'Brien in a race in which I suppose the horse showed plenty of inexperience. That was due to Henry Adams won, but this was Chief Little Rock who ran in the EBF maiden behind Juxtaposition. Paddy Toomey with another winner, but I thought Chief Little Rock ran a really nice race. He's a brother to Akita Sushi who won at Ascot this year, so a nice horse going forward, I think.
Perfect. And we'll have more of that to come in Racing Recap. So there's only one place to start, and that's going to be the King George. Jim Crowley's described this as the best race I've ridden in, and it was some finish at the end. Hukum and Westover obviously fighting out the finish. Sam, what were your thoughts on the race?
Some statement that, isn't it, from Jim, given where he's been all over the world and the races that he's ridden in, some very illustrious contests. Great race, primarily. As in boil it down to a horse race, two horses going hell for leather, nostrils flared. Yes, we have a little bit of a whip issue again, which is probably going to manifest itself later in the week, with a suspension probably looming for Jim Crowley. But I thought brilliant training performance, as everyone did, from Owen Burrows and his team to get Hukum back to that level. A race run at a fearsome early gallop, and that's why they were punch drunk in the straight, most of the contenders. But these two, Hukum, Westover, two mature horses, 6 and 4, the winner and runner-up, and they came clear of the 3-year-old. And it was probably just that robustness, that battle-hardened nature that they have, the maturity, the strength, and the conditioning that meant that they were fighting out the finish at the end. I thought it was a great duel in the sun.
Yeah, just touching on, obviously, Jim Crowley and the whip could possibly get 20 days that would obviously keep him out of York's Ebor Festival, where he'd be down to ride the Prince of Wales winner Mostadath in the International. That would obviously be a huge change for Jim. But I think we kind of go back to Ted Walsh's comment of if it looks wrong, it's wrong. Like, it didn't to me. Obviously, you had Rob Hornby and Jim Crowley obviously going through fighting out the finish, but it didn't look wrong to me, Johnny.
See, I don't know where I am with the whip rules in the sense that I think you could do really dangerous things on a horse in Britain and get away with it in terms of dangerous for the riders involved, dangerous for other horses, and keep races. We've seen this time again. This is excessive use of the whip, which is more of a welfare issue really, and anyone who has seen the whip and knows it, the whip does not hurt a horse. It makes a crack noise that kind of puts the horse's mind on the job. It's completely harmless. I didn't see anything. I had to read the story to realise that there was an issue here. And if it were sufficiently bad, he could have gotten disqualified, which is interesting as well. And it's a massive ban. I don't know. I see where they're coming from. I do think British racing is too insecure about the welfare lobby at times. And I know the welfare lobby exists. In Ireland, it's not a factor at all. And I don't know. It would be a real sting in the tail because it was Jim Crowley. The two horses, you could see they were willing themselves. They wanted to win. I don't think the horses were thinking, I'm subservient to a human here because he's hitting me with something that makes a noise. But I guess there are different ways to look at it.
Yeah, and I take your point that, all these interference rules that aren't, they aren't predominantly, they revolve around a result rather than necessarily a horse's welfare. You know, we see horses barging into other horses all the time and clipping heels and whatever, in danger of clipping heels. That's much more of a concern for me than going a couple of cracks over the limit. But the rules are the rules, and these are the rules that we have been installed, you know, rightly or wrongly, by the governing body. And unfortunately, we have to adhere to them. Whether they're right or wrong, you know, that's a personal opinion.
Yeah, and back to the performance, obviously was absolutely fantastic from Hukum. He's now 6-1 second favourite with Bet365 for the Arc. You've got Ace Impact currently favourite at 5-1. The likes of Feed the Flame 8-1, Blue Rose Sen 10-1, and obviously the runner-up Westover at 10-1 in there as well. It's going to be interesting, both of those going forward, and King of Steel, who kind of didn't lose a lot in defeat, finishing in third.
I just had to look for the last 6-year-old to win the Arc. I'm not actually sure any 6-year-old has ever won the Arc, just looking on the old friend Wikipedia here. So that's what Hukum's bidding to do, yeah, if he goes there. But I'd have him definitely over Westover, to be honest, because it's with the climate now, it's hard to predict ground, but it's more and more likely to get softish ground, which will suit him. So he would be a 6-year-old. I don't think a 6-year-old has ever won the race. Whereas for Westover, he put to bed the disappointment of last year. It was a great performance in defeat. He was his career best by my note, 100% a career best from him. I was at the Curragh when he won the Derby, but I would be worried about the Arc in terms of ground for him. And with Augusta Rodan running so disappointing, you're not thinking Save the Last Dance is going to rock up there. I remember Zarkava winning as a 3-year-old back in 15 years ago, a 3-year-old filly. It's been done since. I think Enabled it as a 3-year-old as well. So yeah, and again that would be ground related because the soft. I remember back in when Dylan Thomas won it. I remember backing Soldier of Fortune because the ground that year came up heavy. He wasn't good enough, but I think that could be a big sway in terms of this year for them.
Yeah, she's currently 11-1 with Bet365, obviously with that 3-year-old allowance and the fillies allowance in the Arc, which we know is so important. Sam, anything kind of for the Arc going forward?
Well, I think the favourite's the right favourite, Ace Impact. I think, you know, we've touched on this a number of times on the show before, that the French horses look in advance of the British and Irish ones at the moment. Certainly 3-year-olds and older horses, middle distance, you know, even sprinters and milers. So I probably would favour him. The trouble with Hukum is Johnny, he's got to go against history, really, rewrite the history books. He's also quite a fragile horse as well, so an anti-post proposition, he doesn't really make a lot of appeal. And Westover doesn't make a lot of appeal because of the ground. You know, what that could be in October, the first weekend in Paris. So, yeah, a few question marks that they've got to satisfy, really.
I remember back in Deep Impact to win, Raylink, when Raylink won the Arc that year, because the Deep Impact, this is the madness of it, all the Japanese racing fans came over.
Odds on,
they backed him into like 1-2, and Raylink was sent off like 27 or something on, even though like British and Irish prices, he was like a 10-1 chance. I love this race. I think if you have a bucket list of race to go to, Paris Arc weekend is phenomenal.
Definitely.
And if you can pay for it, all the better. Like, so yeah, maybe have a look at it. It's not a bad time to look at that market, I think.
No. And touching on a couple more of the beaten horses, obviously Luxembourg in fourth. Ran well. It's kind of a solid yardstick.
That's where he's at, yeah. I think that's where he's at.
I suppose, to the Irish Champion States next to try and defend that ground.
Again, I mean, we've seen his vulnerabilities now. I think he's probably a good kind of exponent of his sire, who's shown his own vulnerabilities. Camelot at this stage, he ran very well. I think he's a solid yardstick. The question mark is August Rodan. What happened? Because this recalls the recollection of the Guineas run to me.
Yeah, it's okay for them to do it once, but twice it becomes a concern.
Yeah, 2 in 4 starts, scrambled home in an Irish derby as well. You know, his one sort of marquee performance was at Epsom. If you're going to get one right, that's the one to get right, isn't it? But yeah, other than that, his body of work isn't that impressive, is it?
So the next race to look back on is the Moet and Chandon International Stakes. It was a story of first-time headgear. Baradar winning in first-time cheek pieces beat Hickory, who was wearing a first-time visor. A good race for Kevin Stott, George Bowie and Ammo Racing. Sam, your thoughts?
Yeah, great to see Baradar get his head in front. He's a horse that's threatened quite a lot. Big afternoon it was for Kevin Stott as well and the Ammo Racing team. I thought, you know, obviously King of Steel ran a really creditable race for a shell of a horse. You have to be fully conditioned, I think, for a race of that nature. The King George on Saturday, the way it was run and the way it played out. I thought he travelled around quite nicely and ran a perfectly good race. I think he'll be even better next year, as everybody seems to feel. And then, you know, previous to that race, they saw Baradar win, and that was a real fillip, and you could see the joy sort of in the paddock. It means a lot to Kia Rubichan to win races at Ascot, Royal Ascot or not, and yeah, the cheap piece is on. And it's just been a bit of one of those seasons really for George Bowie, hasn't he? He's just had one or two things that have gone wrong, you know, with the Sadner and perhaps Soprano and one or two other things. So, you know, to land a big handicap like that on a feature day will give him a good fillip.
Sadner just might be a Sadner.
Yeah.
Mightn't be the star that was talked about. But he's 73 winners this season now, Kevin Stott, and just a nice performance. I thought Muntasib was quite interesting, the way he was effectively drawn the wrong side. Now I know he's up to a mark of 102, but he stayed on really well with the view to some other handicap going forward, because it was a race where there did look to be a bit of a pace bias in it. But yeah, Kevin Stott's he's funny. He's one of these riders that we don't really see him in Ireland, so he's obviously making waves over here. But
he's done good stuff in Ireland though, hasn't he?
Yeah, on his odd visit over, yeah, and he's definitely having a great season. 73 winners so far. So
the thing I like about him, he for me, he's almost in that bracket now with Marquand and Ryan, and yeah, he's not quite at that top level, but he looks very tidy on a horse. He's very strong, extremely strong. Tactically, he seems very sound. He's undemonstrative. He gets on, does the job. Yeah, I mean, I just think it's been a really good year for him. It's a difficult job that, you know, I can imagine there's quite high pressure. There was a lot of pressure at Royal Ascot to get King of Steel in front. And to win on him, and that was he was on a bit of a hiding to nothing there on a keen putter in a small field, but he executed the plans brilliantly there. I think he's had a really impressive first year.
Is Megan Nichols his agent as well? So that's kind of I think that must be an interesting dynamic. Where
he's getting even more pressure from Megan than he is from Kia Rubichan probably.
Yeah, they certainly have to get on well. He's 1 from 10 in Ireland, so he has had 10 rides, but they have to get on well, like, you know, to because like she's a serious talent on her hands there with him as well. And yeah, it's that'll be a good documentary. I think the two of them, just how they live their lives.
Well, like last year, his career was really going nowhere. It was at Kevin Ryan's. He wasn't even getting all the rides at Kevin's. You know, they were going out to various people. So there was a bit of a fraught relationship and a conclusion to the relationship there. So he obviously come south now, moved down here. You know, pushed all his chips in with the ammo job, and also getting some decent spares either side as well. The odd Godolphin ride and things like that, which is, you know, it's great for him.
We've then got the Valiant Stakes at Ascot, Random Harvest providing Safi Osborne with a first UK group winner. She obviously won an Italian Group 3 on her previously as well. She is having a great season this season, riding a treble at Yarmouth in the Racing League opener. Sam, your thoughts?
Yeah, big fan of Random Harvest. I mean, she's run well on the straight track at Ascot, the round track. I thought she showed terrific guts and determination to see off all challenges in the straight. Yeah, Safi struck up a brilliant relationship with her. I sadly back to when Rishi's horse came and beat me at Royal Ascot, and I thought Safi was brilliant on her from the front. Not an easy job that, trying to execute front running tactics or prominent tactics on the straight course at Ascot. She saved a bit there, saved a bit, and they kept finding the combination, kept finding them. Rogue Millennium under an inspired Danny Tudor mowed her down late, but I'm glad that they got a bit of compensation Saturday.
She's a mare by Warfront as well, who basically is kind of persona non grata in Ireland now. The Ballydoyle experiment is gone, but I think the Safi Osborne story is great because we don't really have this yet in Ireland as well. We're waiting, Sam, for this like female flat jockey to come through, and it's not a gender thing, but like we have Rachel Blackmore, but it's really hen's teeth in terms of flat female jockeys, and like, but the way it's becoming more problematic for the lads going forward. I mean, there've been a plethora of really good female flat jockeys in Britain. I think it's massive for the marketability of the sport. Like when Rachel Blackmore was at Wimbledon there, with the other royalty that is Rishi Persad, obviously. But Rachel Blackmore was like, she was all over the papers because she was in the royal box. And I think like Ireland could do with like a Safi Osborne. She's a very likeable character as well. I always. I have to say, I always thought her dad was great value for his stuff on social media, and just, you know, I think she's great value, and I'd like to see something similar in Ireland come forward. We have like Siobhan Rutledge, who's doing well, but we need we could do with a Safi Osborne,
Yeah, she's brilliant, and she, as you say, is just a raft of talented female riders, and we don't even describe, you know, they're just riders, aren't they? They're brilliant, and you know, she rode an absolute blinder on Saturday, and that's just the latest example of her showcasing her undoubted talents.
I think it's something that racing really needs to market, because it's one of the only sports where really the gender just isn't a thing, and it's like something we should be really proud of, particularly in terms of staff. Like, it's pretty much 50-50, and like nobody sees a man or a woman anymore, and you know, we need to market that, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then the last race at Ascot to review is the Princess Margaret Stakes. Sacred Angel provided Charlie Johnson with a first UK Group winner solely in his name, beat Pretty Cristal by 3 lengths in what was a really impressive performance.
Yeah, I think it's only the SP that makes it, you sort of question the result a little bit, but if she was sort of 5-6 to 1, we'd be really eulogising about the performance. And it's a real pick-me-up, I think, for Charlie Johnson going into a big week this week, which the stable obviously target Goodwood. They've got a raft of entries and runners. And he's lost some high-profile horses this year, which have been sold to go abroad and race abroad and stuff. So that's it's brilliant for them and brilliant for Charlie that he's managed to, uncover a real class filly here, and be interested to see how the campaign are going forward. I thought it was a really, really interesting performance and an exhilarating one, really. There were some good horses in behind. The likes of Symbology and Dazzling Star were well backed to beat her, and she saw them off with plenty in hand.
She's in a yearling stakes race at York, which is basically a Goff's kind of sponsored race, which is the guts of, it's like a big prize money.
Yeah,
so
massive, yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that horses leaving, and like I know a lot of trainers in Britain are frustrated when good horses go because of the prize money situation. But he's said he needs to have a good Goodwood. He's made himself under pressure because of this, as Sam says, the connection. But again, this was a really impressive performance, and the way that the horse quickened after sort of coming under a bit of pressure, like just put the race to bed quickly. And if you take away that SP, this is a serious performance, I thought.
We then head over to York. Al Flayler upset short price favourite My Prospero to win this Group 2 by half a length. It was a really good performance. Johnny, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, on Burrows, he's just had a great run of it. And this horse is quite interesting because he's by Dark Angel, who would be predominantly a pace influence, but he's obviously had his training issues. I don't think he'd ever run over a mile and 2, and this is the extended mile and 2.5, and My Prospero, really solid rival, and considering, like, you'd imagine he'd come on to run as much as he's good fresh, and he was a little bit fresh in the race. I think there's a very good form, so where they go going forward, I don't know, is he entered in the Juddmonte? Maybe could they look at that, but he's actually quite a blank canvas at a mile and 2. As I mentioned, he's out of an Oasis Dream mare as well, so loads of pace in his page, but stays well, and it was a lovely performance, and maybe one a bit snugger than the halfling suggests as well.
Yeah, I think Andrea had been down to ride him a couple of times in preparation for the race, so they'd obviously identified Andrea as the second jockey, with Dane O'Neill being out. As you say, he's off to Hong Kong very shortly, but looks like he's riding with plenty of confidence, and I thought he gave this horse a beautiful ride, really. Just smuggled him into the race and just had one go at them late on, didn't he?
And then the final race to review in full is the Prix Rothschild. Marquis de 7A completing a 1-2 for Andre Faber. Johnny, your thoughts on that one?
Dropping back in trip, Andre Favre crediting John Gosling and Nashra. I thought this was a very nice performance actually, and sort of came up the outside. They went a sensible pace, very well ridden as well. A jockey we wouldn't know much about in our parts, but when you're dropping back in trip, it's easy to get it wrong pace-wise. You can just go too hard, but basically Marquez was in the comfort zone. It was a lovely performance, and it was a good exponent, I guess, of dropping a horse back in trip and the British out of luck in the race.
Yeah, and that's been the case.
We've had a obliteration for the Irish and British.
Yeah,
in France
exactly. Yeah, the European, the French 3-year-olds and older horses look very, very strong at the moment, don't they? And that was another example of it. So, Baron Rothschild winning the Prix Rothschild.
Yeah, a good party, I'd say. Yeah.
Decent champagne, I would imagine.
So Sam, you touch on UK runners over in France. Obviously had elite status winning that Group 3 in France on Sunday, up to 6 furlongs for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, it's no wonder he struggled a bit at Royal Ascot. That 6 looked well within his remit, didn't it, at the weekend. And good bit of placing, I think, from Carl Burke just to get that one in the bin, and then they can move on for the second half of the season. And
where does he go now?
Yeah, that would look an obvious stepping point, and then perhaps even a duost, as you say, might be stretching out to 7 later on in the year.
He's
or middle part.
I think, in fairness, it kind of it showed what Carl Burke felt about the horse. He was really bullish going into Ascot, where I think just maybe the combination of, like, a lot of horses probably did struggle a bit on the ground that day. He looked a bit happier on the soft ground in France.
And Johnny, we touched in the intro around obviously a few impressive performances from Ireland in the week, the likes of Ylang Ylang and Henry Adams. Anything else to note?
Yeah, it was mainly the Thursday actually. This was a really good card. They've changed the times in Ireland now. The racing takes place a bit earlier. So I remember I used to go to Leopardstown meet, would be on at 6 and you'd be finished at 9 and it was perfect after work. And they're not really getting the crowds they should. It's more of an experience now to go racing and then to have the music afterwards. But like this was a really good flat card. Lang Lang, if she can get a mile and a half, and this is the question mark, because on pedigree she should get a mile and a half. She could be exceptional. Like I just love the way she goes about her business. She wasn't overly impressive, but I still think she's very good, and she probably is running over her minimum trip here. A couple other horses just to note as well, Steve. I thought like Ger Lyons has had a very good evening. Waltham absolutely bolted up in the rated race. His dad, Roaring Lion, would have won one of his big days at Leopardstown. Like Picture of a City, so Picture of a City's rated at 86. He beat him by 6 lengths in his second start. It's a very good performance, giving him a lot of weight as well. And just a couple of other horses. Chief Little Rock, who was second in the maiden, he's a horse by Galileo actually. Must be his, I'm just looking at this now, it's probably his last bunch of 2-year-olds off the top of my head. But he was very, very green, and Aidan O'Brien's record with Galileo horses first time out isn't great. And this horse was really, really strong at the line. He was going to get up in another few strides. I thought that was a nice performance. And Elang, I'd be looking at the Oaks for her, because I think with her being by Frankel and on the dam side, I think that's the place for her to go. And if she stayed that trip, she'll be exciting, and she's still a decent price as well. Henry Adams was fine. He won by a neck. Devious's form sort of ties in with some of the good 2-year-olds in England. But yeah, I mean, there was a significant on-runner or two in that race as well, so probably wasn't the strongest renewal of the Tyros.
Yeah, Henry Adams apparently heads to the Futurity Stakes next, which will be the logical bit. Ylang, anti-post wise, he's 8-1 favourite with Bet365 for both the 1,000 guineas and the Oaks. So you're saying you prefer?
I'd prefer the Oaks. Yeah, I know she's like been running over 7 so far, but I think on pedigree she's absolutely made for it, obviously. And yeah, if she can, she relaxes in her race. So a lot of the Frankels are quite hot, but she seems to be fairly relaxed, and she's a lovely way of going. Lovely big stride in her.
She's got a great mind.
Got a great mind. All these yeah. Remember, Aidan doesn't have that many Frankels, and it's kind of a joke. But the Galileos did have a great mind. The Frankels do not have a great mind. No. A lot of them. You look at. We'll talk about Inspirlands. Some of them are quite hot, which is the beauty of racing. The dad was quite hot, but yeah, lovely mind. Lovely mind.
And finally, Sam, we obviously then had the first meeting of the Racing League at Yarmouth on Thursday. What are your thoughts on that on the whole?
The positives are that it's bringing extra investment into the sport. It's providing competitive racing. That's all well and good, but I just don't think people are really buying into these teams. I don't know how Johnny feels about this.
It's not a thing in Ireland at all.
No.
It's funny enough, like
even though you're an Irish team, and
yeah,
you had a lot
and with Kevin Blake and all that, nobody talks about it in Ireland. It's just one of these things that it's seen as a bit of a gimmick, and I don't really begrudge them for trying, because we need kind of new inventions and so forth. It just hasn't taken off in Ireland at all.
No. I think that one team competition, the Shergar Cup, has found a good place. I understand, trying to the ambition to build up the Racing League, but I think they're giving away tickets for next to nothing, and I'm not sure they're still getting the crowds in that you would like. And it's a shame, really, because you see York over the weekend. Craig David playing, good card, 35,000. Nearly their best attendance for however many years, which is terrific. The place was buzzing. Ascot seemed pretty busy. So, the crowds will come if you put on a good afternoon's racing and perhaps even some music in the evening. But yeah, I just wonder whether it's a step too far, this Racing League. I don't think people have really bought into it.
And that concludes Racing Recap this week. Before we get into our Goodwood preview, just to let you know that our sponsor, Bet365, have an ITV Racing price promise. They will not be beaten on price for any horse in all UK and Irish races shown live on ITV Racing. Full terms and conditions can be found on the website. So we'll start with Goodwood first. We obviously have declarations through for the Tuesday. The Lennox Stakes is the first race to have a look at. Kinross bids to regain his crown in this race, won it in 2021, then finished second to Sandrine last year. Sam, is Kinross a worthy favourite?
Justifiably favourite, isn't he? Good run in the July Cup. Comes to hand the back end of the year when the ground softens. Got a great record with Frankie Dettori. My one small negative is the stall 1. I think last 10 years, stall 2's won this race, but other than that, I think it's always been 4 and above. So sometimes you can get trapped in on that rail, you can't get a position. Now, if ever there's a man that can extricate yourself from a difficult position or a pocket, then it's Frankie Dettori. But just round here, if you hunt round on the inside and other jockeys play jockeys and keep you in, that might just be a slight issue for Kim Ross if you're taking a short prize.
The keenness at Newmarket was a little overstated, wasn't it? I thought he was fine, maybe a little bit fresh, and he ran well in a good race.
Yeah.
It was interesting listening to Fran Berry was relaying what Johnny Murty used to say, that you'd be at Galway looking at Goodwood and say, oh, that's a lovely place, and he was like, this is a really tricky track. And I don't like it's Goodwood is a really, really tricky track. It's interesting you say that about the draw, because Frankie will have that in his head in his final Goodwood.
Yeah, it was just something, just doing the card that, we wouldn't be perfect for him, that's all. And if he gets the run round, he's obviously the starting point, and he's probably the horse that you have a savour on. I thought Isaac Shelby might be in a good position here. Thought Pogo, perhaps Audience, would go along at a good gallop, and if Sean Levy, can just sit on the sort of the hooves of those two and just on the quarters of those two, he might get first kick. I didn't think his run behind Paddington looks so bad now, does it? Even though he's a touch disappointing. He won't mind a bit of cut in the ground. I think it's been dry over the weekend, or dryish over the weekend, but I think Tuesday's going to be dry, but then rain into Wednesday morning. Could even get some more later on in the week as well. Thursday, sun and showers, which obviously won't affect the first day, but I think there'll be plenty of dig there anyway. There's been some big numbers that they've had down at Goodwood, like the weekend before, 30 mil over the weekend and stuff. So I think there'll be plenty of juice in the ground, and that won't inconvenience Isaac Shelby.
Currently priced at 5 to 1, we bet 365. We'll then move on to the Goodwood Cup. You've got a bit of a rematch, really, from the Ascot Gold Cup. Courage Mon Ami, 9 to 4 favourite currently. Coltrane 11 to 4. Then you've got Emily Dickinson 6 to 1, Eldar Eldarov 9 to 1, and Giavoletto 11 to 1. So
a lot of rematches. Yeah. What do we have? We've 4 or 5 from Ascot here, and you could even make a case for Lone Eagle. He was so free, he was really, really gassy. I think he actually shortened a lot in the in-running market, even though he had run so free. He ends up beating 12 lengths, but dropping back to 2 miles here is definitely interesting. I might give Emily Dickinson one more chance here. I think, in fairness to her, when she won at the Curragh, Ross Carberry's a very good horse, and she destroyed her. She beat her 3 lengths, and Aidan O'Brien said she didn't go on the ground at Royal Ascot. That is just that bit too quick for her. So she was, what was she sent off? 11 to 1 behind the pair of them at Royal Ascot, and I think she's very reliable. They are backing her up pretty quickly, but I think she's going to run very well. She'd be my sort of each way at the prices.
Yeah, I could certainly see that argument. She was only beaten 4 or 5 lengths in the Gold Cup, and like I say, there was valid excuses for her not finishing closer that day. And I was really taking that performance in the Curragh Cup. I thought it was a good effort. I just think Courage Mon Ami, he's been to the track. If he copes with the ground, that's the issue. If the ground's not too soft, then to do what he did in the Gold Cup, all right, people don't think that it was a vintage renewal, and I get that, but he was 6 lengths behind the winner on the home turn.
He did it very well.
4th ever start, and to make up that ground quickly. I backed Coltrane, tipped him,
did I,
and he got the perfect run round, didn't he? He got a great ride. He was always in the box position. He went to win his race, and then this thing appeared from nowhere. Switched outside and had collared him.
On his 4th start.
Yeah, on his 4th start. Yeah. It was a tremendous performance, bouncing out of a Goodwood handicap and beating Agazio. I couldn't have him in the Gold Cup, and to leave that form behind, which he'd achieved in those previous 3 starts, and jump to that level so quickly. There's more improvement to come, surely. If he coats to the ground, I think he's going to take a lot of beating.
So who do you think would suit the drop-in trip back down to 2 miles more, Coltrane or Courage Mon Ami?
It's kind of hard to see it make much difference, though, isn't it? Because Coltrane was 4th in the race last year.
Yeah. Travelled up quite well.
The one thing is 2.5 is quite an extreme. I don't think it necessarily suits Emily Dickinson, but with those two, I don't think it'll make that much difference. Certainly, the Frankel horse dropping back in trip won't be a problem.
I think any horse that's won over 1.5 miles at Kempton, 2 mile round good was absolutely fine for him. So I think Courage Mon Ami, and the pace that he showed to go and nab the front. Those prominent races in the Gold Cup, he doesn't lack toe, does he?
It's a great division. I think Kyprios has been aimed at the Irish Ledger last year's winner. I think he's entering the Irish Ledger. So once he comes back, it's been a fantastic staying division at the moment.
Yeah. We've got declarations through this morning for the Sussex Stakes. 6 runners declared. Paddington will be odds on when the market reopens, I'm sure, to beat Inspiral. So you've got Paddington, Inspiral, Aldari, Chindit, Factor, Cheval, and Charin. Paddington's obviously going to prove hard to beat, but the prices, anything else, Johnny?
It's just disappointing that this race, in fairness, it has cut up a little bit.
But obviously, the Nostrum's the big.
Nostrum was the big one.
chase.
Paddington, for me, it's interesting. Again, they haven't bothered with a pacemaker. They just, I thought it was quite notable. And before he stepped up to mile and two, the last against Emily Upjohn, Aidan O'Brien was kind of saying, yeah, he's going to make the run and it's no issue, like even stepping up to mile and two. And here again, they've decided he'll be able to go out in front. That, I think pace-wise, this will be totally against Inspiral, because Ryan Moore is going to go off. He's going to go out in front, dictate. She could have missed the break at that stage. I don't see any negative. He handles the ground well. Really interesting stallion prospect going forward as well, because he's a fine, big, powerful horse. And he should win.
Yeah, agreed. I don't see any reason, unless all these runs catches up with him, surprisingly, and maybe the track just unbalances him a touch. But he looks bomb-proof, doesn't he, really?
Very strong at the end of his race as well.
Yeah,
you know?
very, very. And we've said a number of times on this show, his early season performances on the clock were nothing special. He was just getting the job done. And then the leap forward he took at Ascot, and then again in the Eclipse, was just extraordinary, really. I know we've seen the Eclipse form get a bit of a bump with Emily Upjohn, but you know she had a bit of previous with the King George, didn't she, from last year? I'll probably take a chance and have a bet without the favourite here and back the French Raider. We've touched on the fact that you know the French horses are enjoying a good time at the moment against our horses, so have a look at Factor Cheval, third in the Prix d'Isfahan last time, you know, behind Anmat and Light Infantry. That was a good run, very solid run. Won't mind the ground. You know, there's a bit of a question mark for one or two of these on the ground. If it did get proper soft, I'll take a bit of a chance with Factor Cheval.
I think he might be ridden to track Paddington as well, and it might be one of these slightly tactical races where I'd be bang against Inspiral. I just don't think this is going to suit at all, and she's obviously making that market strongly in that without market.
Yeah, the Sussex is often a tactical affair, isn't it, with these short, like small fields, the Frankles and.
I just like something sometimes outside the box with these sort of races. Modern Games is another that wouldn't want juice, really. No. He's tried to steer clear of that for much of his career, Charlie Appleby. So, you know, you've got Inspiral to beat. Maybe if Aldari runs, I'm not sure. But, you know, Factor Cheval just won't mind the ground, and hopefully will be ridden to pick up some pieces by Maxime Guillaume.
The race that I'm looking forward to most at Goodwood is the Nassau Stakes. I think this is going to be the race of the meeting. Blue Rose Sen coming over, currently 11 to 10, anti-post with bet 365. Then got Nashwar 2-1, Walmhart 8-1, Al Hussein 8-1, who obviously beat her at Newcastle. Running Lion also jocked up 10-1 for the race, so it looks an absolute belter.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what you think of Nashwar here, because I was surprised there was such a price discrepancy between her and the French horse. 3-year-olds have a very good record in the race. Blue Rose Sen has been, I mean, she beat Never Ending Story the last day. She's very, very strong at the end of the race. She didn't actually even break that well. She came up the rail. I think she had like one of the horses in the same ownership kind of making the pace a bit. Really, really strong to finish. Maybe Nashville was probably a bit flattered at Newmarket. They kind of came back to the field, but it was still a hell of a performance, and what a race this is going to be fair. I don't know if Never Ending Story is going to rock up. Maybe Warm Heart, who ran obviously a bit disappointing. The Curragh might show up, but it's great to have a French horse over. I do wonder, will they be quite as interested to see as well Jackie O, who ran. She won very well at Gorn the other day. If she rocks up here and backs that up, but it's a hell of a race.
It is. It's one that I'm just looking forward to watching rather than punting him, probably. But I think if Blue Rose Sen handles the ground, which will be no issue, handles the track and the undulations of Goodwood, I think that's my only question mark. I think she's absolutely brilliant. I think she's got, you know, stamina. She quickens. She's got a change of gear. That last performance was, you know, astonishing. And I know we can say the same for Nashwar, but I think Nashwar's main strength here is the fact that she's operated well around Goodwood. Whereas I think Blue Rose Sen's got that box to tick, but I think she's arguably the most talented of the two. And reiterate the point about the French 3-year-olds being better than our horses. I know she's taken on an older horse here, but you know her graph is continuing to climb upwards.
Definitely.
To be fair to Al Hussein as well, like kind of almost slightly out of the picture in terms of like having already beaten Nashwan is a really, really backable price if turning up. Tactically, again, it's going to be interesting. I think Nashua, if this is run at a sluggish pace, that's the big, I think, plus for Blue Rose, saying she'll be able to just sit up, go about her business regardless of what happens. Whereas Nashua, if they go sluggish here, that's not going to suit her.
Yeah, it's well worth mentioning Alhusen. Like, she kind of, the whole performance was discounted as Nashua disappointed on the day. But they did pull sort of 3 lengths clear of the third that day.
Yeah.
Showed a good attitude in the finish. And she's really lightly raced. Like, what is she in her career? 6 from 9. And has won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of her last 7.
Yeah,
Really
and people
progressive.
might use, Remarque's performance over the weekend to beat Nashua with as a stick to beat her with, but obviously Random Harvest came out of the Falmouth and won, so there are positives. I think it's a really difficult race to call. It's an intriguing race, and sometimes you see races. I think if they flip the other way around, I'd take a chance with Blue Rose 10 at 2 to 1, but I don't really want to back her at 11 to 10.
No. Friday, we've got the King George Qatar Stakes. Highfield Princess back out, short price to win this. Ran well twice at Royal Ascot, didn't she? And yeah, this seems to be the logical target for her.
It does. It's a good opportunity for her as well. Back down to Group 2 company. I'm going to take a little bit of a chance here, I think. Ed Walker obviously enjoyed a good weekend. His horses are in good form. I think he's had sort of 3 or 4 winners in the last few days. And Makarova looks a filly that's going the right way for me. I know she was beaten by Equality and takes him back on again from that Sandown performance. But I like the fact that she's already run at Goodwood. And I don't know what price she is with Bet365.
16 to 1 with Bet365.
I think 16s each way for a yard in great nick. And a filly that's going the right way. You haven't got to go back that far to see a second to Azure Blue. There's some good efforts in there, and I think she won't mind a bit of dig in the ground either. So I'll take a chance with her each way against Highfield Princess.
Anything for you, Johnny?
I'd be with Highfield Princess, but like it's not really a betting race at the moment. I think the thing about her is she won't mind whatever way the ground is. And again, great to see these 6-year-olds in action at the top level, pretty much.
Yeah. Excellent, Johnny. I'll head over to you for Galway. Obviously, you've got the Galway Plate, the Galway Hurdle, or anything else that we've got decks for.
Yeah, so you've a sort of a pivot race every day. One of them is a 7 furlong race, one of them is a mile race. Then you have the Plate, the Hurdle. The Monday night is the 2 mile amateur race, and you have a 1.5 mile handicap. And then I think the Saturday feature is a 2-6 hurdle race, but the Galway has mixed cards as well, which for punters is really, it is actually great fun. And you have, funny enough, Dermot Well doesn't have a runner in the 2-year-old maiden this year, but you've really good 2-year-olds, very, very much a sign of the times, maybe with DK's kind of strength and depth. But, we've a horse running in the Plate rated 167 in Hewick. That's Gold Cup standards. So that's definitely one of the narratives of the week. Just in terms of, I suppose, something to tip. The Tuesday, I was in Limerick. I was in Limerick last week. I'm getting my dates mixed up here. But just Salt and Stall has gone back to win the Colin Quinn Mile for the 3rd time. I think he's been a little bit disappointed maybe in recent years, but he's come back to a mark that I thought his run at Leopardstown was very solid. He's going to be, I'm just looking at Bet365 here, not priced up yet, but he's going to be 16 to 1. Bet365 will probably have 5 places in that race as well, because it's so competitive. And then on to the Wednesday, the Galway Plate being the feature. A really good race this year with, as I said, with Hewick sort of top weight. But I really like the claims of Enniskerry here. He ran, I think, over hurdles at the Galway Festival, but he won his chase at the Galway Festival. I always think if you win at Galway as a novice, sometimes I think connections already have an eye on the Plate the following season or whatever, and the same over hurdles. He then rocked up at, he did disappoint in his last chase start, but he's only had 3 of them. He rocked up then at Leopardstown, a qualified rider as maiden under Finney Maguire. This was a strong race. Moncur, who was second, is a lovely horse. He was apparently almost impossible to pull up, beaten by 6 lengths under Finney Maguire, and Michael O'Sullivan's been booked. He does lack experience, but I think if he gets into a rhythm, he's already a 9-year-old, so this is the time to run him in the race. I think he's plenty of upside. Loves Galway, and he might have a bit of scope from his mark. Hell of a renewal of the Plate.
Yeah, definitely. Anything in the Galway hurdle? Obviously, Zarek the Brave is kind of all the rage at the top of the market currently, 5-1.
4-year-old.
Yeah, with Bet365.
Yeah, I mean, I generally don't like backing 4-year-olds in strong handicaps, and I don't think a 4-year-old has won this in about 20 years. To be honest, I don't really remember them running in it. It's a bit like we're recording this. It's a bit like there's a 3-year-old running in the mile handicap as well of Aidan O'Brien's that rarely win, but like. It's a big ask for a 4-year-old. I like Party Central here, who you'll both be familiar with from her forays. She's funny as well. She's coming here like Inniskerry, coming here after winning a flat maiden very, very well. She's a bit of a bridle horse, but to be fair, she's run off 142. She's loads of class, and I really like that run the last day. She's no real negatives for me. I think she'll run very well. Her price has come in a little bit, but Gordon Elliott's horse in great form. Really deep renewal of the race. The likes of Brazil, it was an ex-4-year-old who obviously likes around Cheltenham. He's very solid. Mighty Tom is progressing hugely. Really
about
tough.
Merlin Giant? I thought it was an interesting run on like cheap pieces on Dan Royal on the flat last time.
Yeah, and again, that maiden, Impero, who was second that day, he's been competitive since in the high 80s. That's actually really solid form, and it's going to be, Emmett Mullen just lays out these horses, the Mees for Galway. Definite chance as well, and will go well on the soft ground.
Well, he's won 4 times at Galway, hasn't finished out the frame, has he?
Yeah, so basically Emmett has the favourite in the 2 mile handicap on the Monday night. You might have listened to this while you're recording, but all these Mee horses are laid out for the track. But it's funny, I walked the track last week in Galway, and for all the rain they've had, I mean, Ballinrobe was yielding ground that night after the Curragh had been called off the day before due to waterlogging. So they've done a lot of work on the drainage of these tracks in the west, and Galway actually, you might think it'll be bottomless, but it won't be at all.
Right.
Excellent. Sam, anything else from you from Ireland? If not, obviously we've got lots of other races at Goodwood to touch on, the likes of the Molecombe and Richmond, Gordon Stakes.
Yeah, the Molecombe I like because you've got Killian against Big Evs. I'm big fan of Big Evs. I thought it was a tremendous performance at Ascot. I think it went under the radar a little bit, but I thought it was one of the performances of the week, really. And the speed figure was phenomenal for 2-year-olds. He'd obviously worked with a NAF and all sorts at Appleby's Yard, and I don't think they hid his light under a bushel too much. They thought they got something pretty special. That translated to the track as well. I thought that was a really good effort. Interesting to see where the chess piece runs in the Gordon Stakes on the Thursday. I think there's a bit of disparity in his prices in the village if you hunt around. I think 365 are quite short, and I think you can get 10-1. Taken with him at Hampton, that was only a couple of weeks ago. I think he's got that or the Voltager before stepping forward to the St Ledger. That's the way they're looking. The only way he might not run, I think, on Thursday is that it's a bit of a quick turnaround from Hamilton, but he obviously coped with the undulations well there, and I like that going to Goodwood, that he's obviously quite a nimble type who is very reliant, I think, on some cutting the ground, so hopefully Connections might take a chance. I think at 10-1 for him, I think that's a fair price. And the Richmond's a really interesting race as well with Jassor in. But I thought Sketch was tremendously impressive at Newbury. Did plenty wrong, got bumped coming out the stalls. Then was keen enough, then made all, then bolted up by 5 or 6 lengths. Yet again, it's a once racehorse going into a good quality pattern race. That might be a little bit of a concern, but he's obviously got an enormous amount of ability. If he can overcome that, then I think Sketch is interesting in the Richmond.
I've actually another horse in that as well, Albacil, who is a horse by showcasing. He's only run the maiden. He's 33s at Bet365 is a general price. I think he's James Ferguson only run the race, but if they run him here, he was 11-1 at Newbury. Really flashed home. Now I'm spoofing to say like that this is form that would entitle him to win a Group 2, but if they go here, he looks very promising. Just as well on. I spoke to Aidan O'Brien just to get some information maybe on a couple of runners. Espionage, I was at Roscommon when he won Ryan Moore's first trip to Roscommon. He is entered later on in the week in the Good Mile and 6 race. It's a Good Mile and a Half race, but he said he's unlikely to run, so just to keep that's on the Thursday, so keep your pockets dry there. Good horse going forward. He's entered the Ledger. I think he's only like 8 or 9-1 for the Ledger. Really strong horse. I'd be keeping an eye on him.
Perfect.
Cool. Yeah, I think... Yeah, I'm pretty much done really regarding... I mean, obviously Latam in the Golden Mile. He looks as though he's been laid out for that. The Irish Curragh winner. The Irish...
Lincoln
winner, sorry, at the Curragh.
The form of that race will get huge endorsement or otherwise in the Galway Mile, actually. They're all tied up.
Yeah, Ada McGuinness has got about 9 in that, has he?
Yeah, it's 19. Yeah. He's just targeting these like good sort of mileage handicappers, and it actually makes sense because you have a lot of sort of options to throw at, and it gives you fun as well in big races like Galway, so it's probably not a bad way. And you can always kind of tackle listed pattern races as well if you often you get small fields, so they pay their way.
Yeah, no, I could see Latam being short on the day. Goes with a bit of cut in the ground, haggis, and Friday's Golden Mile. Given a half decent draw, I would think he'd be quite short.
Okay, I'll put you both on the spot. If I had to get you to bet one horse for the upcoming week, it can be at Goodwood, it can be at Galway. Who would it be?
That's a good shout, actually.
I'll go with Enniskerry in the plate on the Wednesday in Galway.
Thank you, Dave.
I will go a chess piece if he runs in the Gordon Stakes. Because Adelaide River's in that and he's been busy enough.
Yeah.
I think that race might cut up as well. Hopefully Chris Woods will let him take his chance.
Excellent. Thank you very much for joining us on this week's episode of Racing Weekly, brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. Many thanks to both Sam and Johnny for joining me this week on the show. As always, if you've liked what you've watched or heard on this or any of our previous episodes, then please leave us a kind review on Apple Podcasts and in the comment section on YouTube. There's no episode next week, but Sam and I will be back the week after to have a look back at all of the action from this week and also to look ahead at the Hungerford Stakes card at Newbury. Thank you very much.